What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I want to welcome you to the first video of the upcoming FPL 2022/2023 season. If you guys are a returning viewer, welcome back. If you are a new viewer, hopefully you enjoy your stay. And in this video, as you can read from the title, I'm going to be going over my first draft. Now, I know what you're probably saying, it's too early to go over drafts, kind of creating these drafts, but because the fixtures were released this morning, at least our drafts have a little bit more guidance. Now, I know that we're all kind of doing these drafts in our own minds, but I decided to show you guys what I'm currently dealing with, kind of spun up a quick draft real quick to show you my current template. So the reason I created this, as I mentioned earlier on, was because the Premier League released the fixtures this morning, so I'm combining that with price predictions to give you guys my first draft. Hopefully you guys are absolutely pumped for this upcoming FPL season. I know that I am. You guys still do have some time though to get hyped because we do have about a month till that kickoff of Game Week 1. And if you guys are a new viewer of the channel and have not watched my channel, hopefully you enjoy your stay, or at least enjoy this video, as I have been creating content on this channel for the last 4 seasons. The first season we finished 22nd in the world, up until the most recent season where we did finish in the top 3K. So consider subscribing if you guys aren't, otherwise put the bell notifications on, because from now till that Game Week 1 deadline, there's going to be a massive amount of content that I don't want you guys to miss out on. With that being said, let's get into this video, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So the first talking point is going to be all about the Premier League releasing the fixtures this morning, the 16th of June, as I am recording this video. So at least now we have some certainty on who plays who from Game Week 1 to Game Week 38. Now, as I always say, for any draft, the fixtures are the bread and the butter, and the bread and the butter for this video is going to be the first 6 game weeks. Now, I kind of always just chosen the first 6 game weeks. I don't really know why. Maybe it's just historically I've watched other people, and maybe some fixture tickers are Game Week 6 related, but I just think the first 6 fixtures are a nice kind of borderline to go for when you are looking at a Game Week 1 draft. Now, you guys can extend that to Game Week 12, Game Week 18, whatever you guys kind of want to go for. I just think with the first 6 game weeks, you get a kind of nice landscape and holistic overview of who are the best players and fixtures to target. Now, I'm going to be highlighting my top 6 teams that I am going to be basing my first draft on. There are some other teams that also have some great fixtures. I just personally prefer these ones, but as I said, this is all kind of situational. Maybe you guys think a team has better fixtures than what I do. Now, the first team I want to talk about is going to be a team that I don't really think mattered what fixtures they did receive. It's going to be Liverpool. I think this is the perfect combination of great fixtures and also great options, and I think it's going to result in a massive effective ownership of all Liverpool assets. So as you guys can see, Fulham away is a great fixture for Game Week 1. This extends to Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, Everton. So within the first 6 game weeks, Liverpool played 2 newly promoted sides. Now, I have kind of rated these fixtures in terms of green, white, and red. Green obviously meaning a good fixture, white meaning a kind of mediocre fixture, and then red meaning a hard fixture. On your guys' screen, it could also be pink though. So in terms of the average fixtures, United away, Newcastle at home, I have related this to the kind of form that they showed at the end of last season. I know kind of United isn't showing that, but I think that downgrades them from kind of a red fixture to a white fixture, as they have not been great, especially last season. But as I said, these ratings are simply subjective, and you guys might have a different opinion to myself. I think Liverpool assets are 100% the options to own. I think a triple up would be quite nice, but unfortunately they do come in quite expensive, and therefore maybe 2 options, a Trent and a Salah, look quite essential. Another thing to take into account with these Liverpool assets is going to be captaincy. Most Salah's effective ownership will be massive within the first 6 game weeks, and therefore I would recommend going for him if you do think he'll do quite well. Another team though that has great options and great fixtures is going to be Man City. So what are the odds here that Man City and Liverpool both get very good fixtures from the start of the season? It's simply outstanding from an FPL point of view, but it's quite hard to fit all these options in because they are quite premium. But in terms of Man City, like Liverpool, they played 2 of the newly promoted sides within the first 6 games, Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest at home for Man City. So I guess you could actually argue that that's better than Fulham away and Bournemouth at home for Liverpool. And then sprinkled in there, they do have a combination of green and white fixtures. I think that first game week fixture against West Ham away puts a little bit of a spanner in the works, because I do think West Ham are a great side, showed last season defensive form and attacking form, and I think Man City could struggle against them in Game Week 1. But after that, it's simply sunshine and rainbows. They've got Bournemouth at home coming up. I think that's a great captaincy option for a Haaland or a De Bruyne. I think those are going to be firmly on the radar when Liverpool do host Crystal Palace. And then after that, into the near future, green fixtures as well. So right now, the current template is probably to fit as many Man City and Liverpool assets in as possible with those budget constraints. We're now going to get on to some other teams that could provide some variation in terms of budget. Some of these players might be slightly cheaper than Man City and Liverpool assets, and even some of these options might be budget at 4.5. Now, unfortunately, the Arsenal assets won't be exactly 4.5, but they still do provide some good value for money. We saw last season a Smith Rowe, a Saka, even some of their defenders were quite well priced, and I hope that that continues into the upcoming season. In terms of Arsenal, great fixtures on paper here. They have Fulham and Bournemouth, two promoted sides as well. And then in between there's some average fixtures against Leicester at home and United away, but also Crystal Palace away in game week 1 might be quite a tough task. I do still think that I favour these Arsenal assets, even though the fixtures are good on paper, but also they provide some nice little entries into a more kind of mid-range options in forward, defence and midfield. Now it's going to be quite interesting to see what Arsenal do in the transfer window. Losing Lacazette, will Nketiah lead the line for them? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe a new number 9 will come into the squad, and then we'll obviously see what he's priced at. The fourth team is going to be Chelsea. Now this might be a little bit of a controversial one. Some managers are saying that Chelsea have bad fixtures, but in my opinion, actually have pretty good fixtures on paper, with Everton away in the first game and only Spurs at home in the second one. So that game week 2 game against Spurs at home is probably the only fixture that you want to avoid, but that's also dependent on how Spurs start the season. After that, they do have Leicester at home as well as West Ham at home. At least those two fixtures are at home, which might give Chelsea the slight advantage. All in all though, I do think the Chelsea assets from a defensive point of view are probably going to be where you guys do target a James, a Chilwell, maybe even going for some other cheaper centre backs. From an attacking department, there might be 1 or 2 options to go for, but I do find them quite expensive. Now the last 2 teams are going to provide some more value for money, and the first team is going to be Wolves. Now Wolves have some of the best fixtures in the opening 6 game weeks out of any team, and that's how I really do want to highlight them. The only unfortunate thing is, if you guys did watch the last season, Wolves were simply terrible. Defensively they were okay, but from an attacking point of view, scored basically 0 goals, but at least they do come in quite cheap. So let's just hope that Wolves start off this season quite well. I will be including 1 or 2 of their assets from a defensive and an attacking point of view, and I just hope with these easy fixtures, they do return some FPL points. The only negative fixture for me is going to be that Spurs away game in game week 3. It is an away game, which is quite unfortunate, but the other fixtures make up for that, and that's why I do think you guys should be looking at Wolves. The final team to go over is going to be Brentford, a side that really did impress. I really do hope that they don't have this kind of second season curse in the Premier League. Usually a team that kind of stays up doesn't have a great second season, but I do think Brentford, with the way they play, could have another stellar one. They have some really nice fixtures coming up. Unfortunately, in game week 1 and 2, not the best fixtures in the world, but they can still do quite well against them. As they showed last season, they really did pull off some massive shock results. After that though, great fixtures in the green zone, and that's why I think a Tony, maybe even a Mbumo if you want to go for more of a defensive option. All these options are quite cheap and I think are going to be worth their value in gold. So overall guys, as you can see, my top 6 teams here. Now there might be some controversy. You guys might be asking where the Spurs assets. I do think they have great fixtures on paper, but maybe 1 or 2 fixtures that I would want to avoid. We also have some other teams that you could also look at from a more budget point of view, but these 6 teams are what I'm currently focusing on. So now going on to the next talking point, and as I mentioned in the introduction to this video, I'm going to be combining the prices and the fixtures to create my first draft. But you're probably also asking, how can I get player prices when they haven't been announced yet? So don't worry guys, I haven't hacked into the FPL Towers database. I don't have leaked player prices for you unfortunately, but I do have the closest thing as possible. So the website that I did use for these player prices, no, it's not a sponsored video, don't worry, there's no affiliate link in the description below. I simply just use this website. It's going to be Fantasy Football Fix. So you guys are familiar with this website if you watched my content last season, but as I said, I'm not sponsored to kind of shout them out, but they do a pretty good job on player price predictions. Now Fixtures has been around for quite a long time, and in terms of the accuracy of these player predicted prices, they've got an accuracy of 98.7%. I don't know about you guys, but I would probably take that if I was writing an exam. A 99% average rounded up is pretty strong, but just keep this in mind, it's not 100%, and there might be 1 or 2 player prices that they do get wrong. But 98.7% is good enough for me and good enough for this video, and that's why the prices you see on my draft will be directly taken from Fantasy Football Fix. Just a reminder that there might be changes to these player prices, but I will address that as I go through each option. So now going on to the actual first draft, which you guys have all been waiting for. Hopefully you haven't skipped to this point, but if you have, hopefully you do stay and enjoy the rest of this video. But I'll be going through each position as I go along, discussing their price and why I have included them. So first things first, as I always go over in any draft or team selection, I'm going to be talking about my bench, and in terms of my bench, there's not much to talk about. The reason for that is that in terms of these kind of budget options, there are always 1 or 2 surprises. There might be an option at 4.5 in the defense or the midfield that catches us by surprise that's kind of underpriced, and I'll be waiting for those when the player prices are released. But right now, in terms of the template, I think this is what you guys should be going for. A 4.0 goalkeeper as always, a midfielder that's 4.5, a forward that's 4.5, and a defender that's 4.0. Now you guys have probably guessed my formation because of my bench, but I've gone for a 4-4-2 formation, but you guys can obviously change this bench, maybe go for 2 defenders on there, go for a 3-5-2, a 3-4-3, whatever you guys want to go for, but the current template will be as cheap as possible on your bench. I think I'll continue this throughout the drafts that I go for. With 5 subs this season, I think the majority of players should come off the bench if they don't start, so that should be fine. You might not need your bench as much as possible in the prize seasons, and also you want to get as much value as possible in your starting 11 with all these lovely premium assets. Now, when I'm taking you guys through how I created my draft, and I think you guys should use the same method, I think it's going to allow for more kind of informed decisions to make and kind of isolate which options you want to include, and these players will probably stay in your team from draft 1 till your game week 1 deadline team. So I'm going to start off with the goalkeeper here because although you might not think it's a very important position, I think this is going to be the season of the 4.5 goalkeeper as it usually is, as I think with all these premium assets in attack and defense, we need some budget options to enable them. So the 4.5 goalkeeper that I've gone for is going to be Raya from Brentford. So Raya unfortunately had an injury towards the start of last season and therefore didn't play the majority of minutes, but when he did play, he got you FPL points. This is going to be heavily reliant on Brentford having a good second season in the Premier League. I do think they will have a good second season, and defensively I'm hoping for some clean sheets from Raya. He's also a pretty good shot stopper. I think his save points will rack up even against the tougher teams, and that's why I think he's perfectly fine at that 4.5 slot. Now, there will be some other assets to go for. In terms of the promoted sides, there have been some talks about some new goalkeepers signing. Dean Henderson could potentially sign, so wait and see, but I currently think in terms of the Prem sides, 4.5 is a great price for Raya. Now we're going to go on to my essential assets to own, and the 2 players from Liverpool that I've gone for are Trent Alexander-Arnold and Mo Salah. Now in terms of the prices, there have been some projected prices for Trent being about 8 million. I think 8 million is probably where he'll come in at a maximum. I can't really see him at 8.5. I think if you guys do look at his historical points, he actually scored less than the price he was at for 7.5. So I think this is a fair signing to go for. Liverpool have just signed a backup right back, so there might be some rotation for minutes later on in the season when the Champions League, the FA Cup and the League Cup come into contention. So 7.5 might be slightly lower than what most people are going for, but I'll just keep him at the fixed price, which is going to be this. In terms of Mo Salah though, the general consensus is that 13.0 will be his price. I think that's going to be a great price to go for the Egyptian. I just hope that he can continue this form and isn't a 4-season wonder. I think you simply have to go for these 2 assets. I would love to go for a third Liverpool asset, but because of the price points, I simply can't afford it. Now the next team to talk about is going to be the Man City assets, and currently I think the 2 essential options are going to be Cancelo and then one of either De Bruyne or Haaland. So the current price point of Haaland is projected to be 12.0. He could come in more expensive, but I think 12.0 is perfectly fine. If he does come in more expensive than De Bruyne, that might be quite a decision to go for. In terms of Cancelo though, I think 7.0 is perfectly fine. I think he'll be priced at this. I just hope that he continues the form he's in and continues to be a favourite in that starting 11 for Pep Guardiola. If there is some rotation in that defensive department, obviously that makes Cancelo a worse option, so I hope that the Portuguese international starts at right back or left back. In terms of Haaland, I think those fixtures upcoming are simply outstanding, but there is some concern about maybe a starting spot if Pep doesn't want to rush him in. And you guys can see I'm really thinking about these potential differential options to go for. I think a different approach to go for might be a Harry Kane, who should come in at the same price that Haaland does. So the reason I'm saying that is that just take that game week 1 for example, West Ham away for Man City, where Spurs have Southampton, and in my opinion Spurs is the better fixture there. What this allows you to do is see what Haaland's kind of up to in that West Ham game, but the only unfortunate thing is that you probably want him back for that Bournemouth at home game in game week 2. So therefore this move is going to use a free transfer, and at the start of the season free transfers are quite valuable, and therefore this might be a little bit of an unnecessary one, especially if we do go for Mo Salah as a captain. So let's take it back to going for the Norwegian. Let's go back to Haaland. They're the same price, so we could easily switch this out, but I do think this might be one of those moves that's quite attractive, as I might want to go slightly more differential in my game week 1 team. But now let's revert back and complete our defensive department. The next defender I'm going to be going for is going to be Ben Chilwell from Chelsea. Now I would actually like Reece James here, but because of the price points, Ben Chilwell's projected to be 6, whereas Reece James is projected to be 6.5, and I think that extra 0.5 is going to be quite valuable when we build the rest of our team. Now between Reece James and Chilwell, I just hope that both of them are fit to play the majority of minutes. If they both start the same amount of games, I think the output there is pretty similar. Both are great attacking assets, and Chelsea should rack up some clean sheets. I will be monitoring Ben Chilwell in the preseason though. If you guys do remember, had a very long-term injury towards the start of last season, so I hope that he's going to be back in form, but Tuchel might also manage his minutes. Another player coming off kind of a long-term injury is going to be our last defender, Nelson Semedo from Wolves. We spoke about those lovely Wolves fixtures. I think at 5.0, great value for money. He has attacking threat and defensive threat with those lovely green fixtures. Now we'll be also monitoring Semedo throughout preseason, as I do think if he's back fit, he should be the number 1 in that wingback slot. You just have to hope that Wolves pick up the form. Now let's move forward throughout our team. I'm going to be going for our midfield department and kind of finishing it off. I'm going to be detailing my second midfielder, which is going to be Saka from Arsenal. 7.5 is the current expectation, but this could also be 8 million after a really strong season for Saka. I think his price point might be slightly higher, but if he does come in at 7.5, great value for money. We spoke about those Arsenal fixtures being so strong, and the nice thing with Saka is that he is nailed in that Arsenal lineup, whereas maybe a Smith Rowe or a Martinelli, they might have some rotation there. Let's just hope that he keeps up the form of last season, and I think that he should be a perfectly fine option for this upcoming FPL season. Now the next option I go for might be a little bit of a controversial one, but I do think he has one of the highest potentials for points in the upcoming season. And that's going to be Pedro Neto. So if you guys played last season, you might not think that highly of Neto, but if you guys played the prior season to that, so 2 seasons ago, Neto was a great FPL asset to go for as he was simply quite explosive. Now combining that with lovely Wolves fixtures, the only thing that might be the nail in the coffin is that if he is out injured, as he was injured towards the latter stages of last season and kind of came back for 2 games before being injured again. So like Semedo and Chilwell, will be monitoring those preseason minutes, and if he does look quite strong, he's going to be 100% in my team, as his price at 6.0 million is very good. Now if there are some price upgrades with the trend, for example, I might be going for an Mbumo at 5.5, as I think he might stay his price because he didn't have the best last season. But right now Neto is going to hold that midfield slot, and in my template, these are the price points I probably will go after. Our final midfielder to go for is going to be luckily another top player. It's going to be Phil Foden from Man City. Now the reason I didn't include him in my Man City coverage was because I don't think he's that essential. Phil Foden will be quite a differential, and I do think between Liverpool and Man City you want to get as many assets as possible, but unfortunately the Liverpool assets such as a Diaz and a Jota come in 1 mil more expensive at 9.0 projected price. I think 8.0 million is a great price for Phil Foden, but now because that centre forward spot is filled with Haaland, I think you'll have to compete for that left wing or that right wing slot. Now as far as I know, Phil can play both sides, but I think the left wing is probably his favourite role, and then I think Jack Grealish is going to be his highest competition. And unfortunately that's the thing with Man City, is any asset that's not nailed is not going to be really worth their price, but I think with those opening 6 games, great price point to kind of get him at, but he could be one of those players that I do downgrade if other options are more expensive. And then finally, the option in our forward department, completing Harry Kane / Haaland in that front 2, is going to be Tony. And before you guys complain about this, I do agree with you. I think right now Fix has him at 6.5, but I think no ways he's going to be at that price. I think 7 or 7.5 is probably more realistic after a really strong first season back in the Prem. But I'm going to include him right now because it allows me to get a better draft as possible. And as I said, I could downgrade 1 or 2 options, such as a Phil Foden, if Tony does come in more expensive. Unfortunately with Mitrovic, Fulham's fixtures aren't that strong, otherwise he would be the player in my selection if Tony's more expensive, but with those Brentford games looking quite strong from game week 3 onwards, I think that Ivan Toney's a great asset to have in that forward line. One consideration as well is that I could downgrade Tony to a 4.5, upgrade my midfield department to an Mbumo if I want some Brentford coverage, or even go for an Eriksen as he is projected to be 6.5. So as you guys can see, the conclusion to my first draft is going to be what you guys see on screen right now. A really cheap bench, a pretty stacked starting 11 with Liverpool and Man City assets kind of dictating it. We also have some Chelsea coverage from a defensive point of view, some Wolves assets, some Arsenal assets. It's just going to be dependent on what prices these options come in at. Now we'll be updating this draft when the prices are released. This is kind of the fixture release draft, but when we do get the player prices, I will update this draft and therefore be able to create a proper draft combining the prices and the fixtures. Let me know what you guys think about this draft down below. If you guys do create your own drafts or using Fix, using other websites, projected points, maybe even using your own projected points, what are they currently looking like and what's your current template? But this is basically the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like if you did and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I'll be seeing you guys for more content throughout this preseason. Subscribe if you're new, put those bell notifications on for all the content from now to that game week 1 deadline. But I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL and I'm out. Cheers, bye.